Classes in session. Hey, welcome to Unlearn 16 Classes in Session. Guys, we are at Season 5 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Part 2. So if you haven't seen the other parts, please go back and watch the other 37 parts, us leading up to this precise moment of amazingness, kind of amazingness, because, like, Stuart really wants to get past it. But I have a question. I have a question to start this entire thing. Not specific necessarily to Season 5, but in a way it is. Do you think that when somebody creates a show, something this sort of iconic and this, it's lasted this amount of time, because as we're talking about this show, we're halfway through it. Well, we're more than halfway through the episodes. What I'm starting to understand, like recognize, obviously we have different interpretations. We have different perceptions of what's gone on, why it's gone on, what would have been better, all of that kind of thing. And then there's the research portion that, I don't do, but you do, in the sense of what did the creators want? What was their intent? What was their goal with episode A, B, and C, or this storyline arc, or whatever? And here's my question. What do you think matters more? Because we're living in a world of a lot of crap gets judged based on the way we perceive it. Do you think it matters more the intent of the creator, or the way that it's perceived? And we're going to have to say the way that it's perceived by the majority of society who actually gives a crap about it, right? Because we're never going to talk about all the perceptions. You're going to talk about the way that the majority perceives it. And for a show like this, it's been off the air for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So, like, which one's more important? Stu, what do you think? Or Stefan, either one? You're in deep thought. I know that's a big question, but I was really thinking, because, you go back and watch this old stuff, and not just Buffy, all the time, and we place a lot of our judgments on it from today's standpoint. And there's nowhere else.
Mhm.
You can't do it any other way. All these people are like, don't judge it from today. I'm like, well, I can't time
Well,
travel. I
yeah,
can't go back.
I, I I think I think it has a lot more to do with the perception today, because when it comes to the writing room, and this is just my interpretation of, we spend a lot of our time in retrospect filling the gaps that they didn't fill themselves. So storylines that make more sense, trying to justify character statements or character development, piecing back pieces or back history of characters so it makes more sense for that character in that moment. I feel like it's similar to, I don't want to bring her into it, but in the Harry Potter universe, you kind of have to separate the creator from the art, because you then create your own version of it and then it expands. And so I think for like the Buffyverse, a lot of like the diehard fans, or a lot of the people who are still connecting with it today, are filling in those particular gaps that they forgot about. Like we talk about, obviously not lore building or history building, because it was very much Monster of the Week for the first two seasons, and you can see where they kind of drop the ball on things like Dawn or Xander or Spike, and we sort of like interpret of what if also, and also how it could have been, and then just kind of justify it by filling in those spaces. So I would say it's more the perceived after the fact.
Okay. Stu, what do you think?
Um, I agree with Stefan. Um, I think that if I was to, I think the want to create a world and the want to create a show is really important as well. I think the what they meant to do in the beginning is as important as the perception we have now. But I think that there is a risk when something becomes successful and many people have a piece of it and it becomes very personalized to them,
Mm-hmm.
that people wish in retrospect it would be something different, because it no longer belongs to the creator. It belongs to the people that are viewing it.
Mm-hmm.
Same as Harry Potter. Harry Potter is like entwined with a good chunk of millennial personality and culture, because it was something to escape into. And Buffy is the same way. I think a little bit more for like late millennial, early Gen X, um, or late Gen X. But um, I think where this show kind of strikes a balance between those things was I think it has so much, and it continues on even
Hmm.
now in comic book form and people rediscovering it. So I think it kind of leans to. I mean, I think it's in a balance of both, but I do think that it weighs a little bit more toward perception, um,
Hmm.
because it is 20 years old.
I find that I only think about Joss Whedon when I want to complain about something. You know what I mean? Like it's only
Yeah,
when a character doesn't make sense or a scene doesn't make sense. That's when I'm like, well, Joss dropped the ball on blank. But when I'm enjoying the show and I'm creating that lore behind it, he has nothing to do with the equation. He just kind of started the book and then we continue to write it as it goes on.
Hmm.
I think too. Kind of off that point is when I complain about Joss Whedon, it's the same complaint I have about J.J. Abrams, um, and any other television show writer who found success with his one thing, and then wasn't happy with that one success, had to branch it off into other things, so it diluted um, what was, and it became a very watered down version in the end. And you
Yeah.
can tell when that show was passed off to somebody else who didn't have that clear vision, um, that he wanted. And I think that, yeah, like he was able to hire writers that wrote in the vein and were with him the whole time. Um, but I think when it comes to looking back at it from a critical lens or 2022 kind of perception of myself,
Hmm.
there are things that I think he as a creator should have plotted out, at least in the beginning, to be like, this is where I want them to go. This
Hmm.
is, and if it changes because the characters change it and the chemistry changes it, that's fine. But this is the overall beginning to end, and this is where I want it to be. Um, you can see that with kind of like Amy Sherman Palladino, is that she always wanted it to arrive at one place, and she kind of got derailed in the seventh season when she was no longer writing it with her husband, and it was somebody else who came in to write it. But that clear trajectory of character development was a singular train going forward. No matter who wrote the episodes, it always got them to the same end. And
Hmm.
we can always complain about the character development of the characters and how some went from like heroes to villains in people's eyes, but it still was a clear um, like building of the character that made sense to that character and the situations it was in. I think sometimes with Buffy, we hop over with character development because we need the character to be in a different place for the story. And
Hmm.
I think that's where you find us as fans filling in what they must have thought or felt because it wasn't overtly told to us or we weren't allowed to experience that with them.
Well, and it's
That's
interesting
my
because
opinion.
you can also definitely tell when Joss is at the helm, like when he's actually writing the episodes. Um, there was like who was it? It was Tracy Forbes who wrote like the worst episodes of season four, like Beer Bad, Something Blue, Where the Wild Things Are. Worst episodes. You can tell when that's her stories. And then Joss Whedon, when he comes in, there's this. Even though they mimic him as best as they can, there are some moments in there where it's like, oh, that is 100% Joss, like 100%.
Hmm.
And then there was
And I
what was the one? There was a who wrote um the episode with that was all about Anya. Season 7. Was it
With the
Selfless?
maybe, yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. So it was Selfless. So he Drew Goddard wrote some of the best episodes of season 7 and then went on to write Once Upon a Time, which is again one of my favorite shows. So but you can tell when the writing is really strong. And then
Hmm.
yeah.
I also think he surrounded himself with some kind of the writers that were able to emulate him and had their own unique voices in the Joss universe,
Hmm.
like Jane Espenson, like Marty Noxon, like David Fury, like
Hmm.
Douglas Petrie. Um, but I do think that when you kind of got other writers in, like kind of writers of the week, it really kind of diverged into their own stories, which I
Hmm.
agree with Stefan. I do think, however, that you can 100% tell when Marty Noxon took on um, as executive producer and showrunner, um, because you can see the tone of the show change.
Hmm.
Like tonally, it's a different show.
Hmm.
Um, which hilariously, off of Stefan's point of like you can tell when another writer writes it, it's not somebody else. Marty Noxon joined Grey's Anatomy for a short time as a showrunner after Buffy, and you can tell the episodes that she wrote because they are so tonally different from the rest of the episodes
Hmm.
of the Grey's Anatomy, and ultimately didn't work out because she didn't sound or want the same vision as Shonda Rhimes. She wanted something a little bit different.
Hmm.
You're a Grey's
Janice,
Anatomy fan, aren't you, Joe?
I love Grey's Anatomy. Yeah.
So she wrote the 3 episodes where Meredith drowns and comes back, and she's in
Oh.
that dreamland
Yeah. Yeah.
talking to
Yeah.
the different nurses, and it makes no sense because what happens in that episode, where with a show rooted in medicine and reality, is that Meredith finds out things about the fellow characters she would never know herself, whether it be in passing conversations. She
Right.
finds out in those episodes that Christina sat in a car where her father bled out and didn't do
Hmm.
anything, couldn't do anything. Meredith would never have known that because Christina never would have told her.
hmm
Um,
Hmm.
so she comes back with this like this more information on like what's happening, that there are ghosts in the hospital, that all of these things, and it's so overtly out of the Grey's Anatomy universe that it
Hmm.
doesn't make sense. And that's very much what Stefan's talking about with this, is you bring other writers in and you're like,
hmm
well, this is a fun and great episode. In the fabric of the show, it is a tear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I apologize. It wasn't. He didn't go to Once Upon a Time. He went to Lost. It was Janice Benson who went to Once Upon a Time, and she was my
Oh
favorite
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
writer for both Once and Buffy. She was my favorite because yeah,
I do
Marty
want.
Noxon
I
was
want
odd.
you guys to keep. I want you to keep in mind this question, like, but for the end, like
Okay.
after season, like season 7, kind of.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't want to. I'm not going to go into it now. I just want you to keep in mind: is it a feminist show? That's
Oh
it.
God.
Is it a feminist? Well, don't. Steph, did you hear my instructions, sir?
I
I'm
didn't
sorry.
say.
But leave it till the end because I think we have to look at it in its entirety. We have to look. You know what I mean?
It's a hard
And
question.
part of it was it intended to be a feminist show written by a man who just didn't know how to write it well. Don't answer it now, Stuart. But
I won't
we
answer
will.
it, but can I? That does kind of bring me up to something about that I want to bring back to season 4.
Fantastic. Yeah, episode 4, right? I mean, season 4.
Season 4, yeah, because we're going to talk about Riley because this is essentially Riley's last season, and he'll show up for
Oh,
episodes here and there, but whatever. Riley sucks.
Oh,
But
don't even start.
I'm finishing season 4 up, and the episode the Yoko factor really really bothered me because Buffy goes back to Angel to when she knows that Faith is gone, so she goes to try and help him. He comes back. Xander, being Xander, tells Riley how Buffy gets or Angel loses his soul, right?
right, right,
So
right.
immediately, because it's man testosterone versus testosterone, he automatically when he finally sees Buffy and she says, "I don't really want to talk about it. He got into my head. It's okay." He automatically assumes they slept together,
Yeah,
automatically. And then he says, "Well, I guess I'll leave you alone." And she's like, "Wait, what's going on?" He's like, "Never mind," and just leaves after she tells him about Forrest. And then he finds Angel again, assumes they've had sex with one another, says, "Oh, did you get that perfect happiness?" And he's like, "What are you okay?" And so they start beating each other up. Shows up
right.
again and is consistently essentially just saying, "Hey, my girlfriend's a slut." And she must be a slut because you're her ex boyfriend. And I must be so upset because while you were dating and she's a consenting adult, she had sex with her partner at the time. And now I'm offended and clearly upset because I'm a man. I'm a white man who has to be upset about the fact that my girlfriend had sex with somebody else before we met. And then assume that he slept with her or she slept with him a second time while we were together, to the point where she even says, "Have I given you any reason not to trust me?" And of course not. Why would she? She said many a times how much she cares about him, but this is just terrible writing, just assumes Buffy slept with Angel because of course she
Yeah.
would, because apparently my girlfriend is a whore.
Look at
Okay,
Horrible.
but wait for it. But then in season 5, when he's having vampire hookers sucking on his arms, he gives Buffy an ultimatum that she needs to trust him or he's going to leave.
yeah.
So who the fuck is
Wait,
toxic? And
wait a
then
minute.
the fucking writers of Buffy have her run clear
Chase
across
him.
Riverdale, chasing a helicopter to beg that piece of beige wallpaper to stay.
But, but, but,
Feminist show
but,
my ass.
I
Oh,
think you guys underestimate how truthful his character is to a lot of men. You think it's bad writing. I think it's a documentary.
Oh.
okay.
You it 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 is. And you know what? The more insecure, it's so funny because while we were out last night, I had a bit of a revelation about, straight guys, not gay men. But well, because it's truthful to the time and it's truthful of insecure men. And what Riley was from day freaking one was, yes, wallpaper, but B, as soon as he found out who she was, he was an insecure little boy, and every action that he was going to engage in from there forward was going to be about that. And the reason why Buffy swallowed it so much is because her past relationships were so traumatic and so ridiculous that this one, that pretended to be safe, that gave the illusion of the guy from Iowa or wherever the fuck he was from, that is supposed to be the thing she should chase across the field. That scene wasn't about her weakness. Like, it wasn't about who she is. It was about that weakness, I think, in everybody who is told so many times that's the right guy. She's told that by everybody. Don't let him go. He's the
Mhm.
good one. Well, no, he's not,
He's
because
not.
toxicity and control comes in so many different forms,
He's no
right? I
different.
was joking. I was joking about last night, and it pertains to this. I was talking about a guy that I met last night while we were out, and I'm standing there talking to him, and this guy, I was nice. I joked. I was trying to be, I got introduced. I'm just trying to be, and what I could feel, in the way I dress and how I present, am a litmus test for straight men. I swear to God, I want to put this out here right now. I'm telling you right now, any straight women that want to test if their person is actually just a confident guy, self aware, good with himself. Just let me stand next to him for about 10 minutes. Because I'm telling you what you can see with a straight guy standing next to me for 10 minutes is a lack of eye contact, an inability to say anything. I've never seen anybody try to literally puff up their chest more. Just give me 15 minutes. Yeah, and it's just insecurity. 100% it's insecurity, but and that's sometimes I get met with aggression, right? Like
Hmm.
that's one kind of guy. Other times
Yeah.
I get met with just being dismissed and ignored and whatever, which is fine. I mean, I don't care. I'm just saying, you want to find the good guy? Put me in the same room with them. Let me give
Well,
him 15 minutes.
and with Buffy, the biggest thing is that, like, Buffy only, and this has nothing to do with her intelligence. Like, Buffy as a character, as a person in the show, is a bright person, obviously, but it's all she knows are these toxic relationships
Yeah.
with every man that she's met, because she meets them
Yep.
when she's a teenager, and then she goes in, she's like, I've got a solid guy, he treats me, and I love him. She literally showed up. I was laughing so hard when she goes to Angel and then just throws herself in his life, acts like a brat, and then she's like, "Oh, by the way, I met a guy, and he gets me off. Bye," and blasts her like middle finger as she walks away to Angel. But all she knows are these toxic relationships. She doesn't know any better. And I genuinely think, and I don't know what's happened in the seasons in the comics so far, but it's one of those things of, like, separate yourself from everybody. Everybody, either be alone or separate yourself from everyone except Xander and Willow and Giles, and just go somewhere else where nobody knows who you are, and just meet someone normal. Just meet a normal person in a normal situation in your 30s. Like, because you have to separate yourself from these insane relationships that you only know as a teenager, constantly in danger. You know what I mean? Like, stop
But
worrying about people trying to protect you.
but her entire story from the beginning is told through the eyes of and her reactions to men,
Yeah.
except for season 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
beginning, it's her father.
Yep.
It's how he left her. Then
True.
And it's
we
Angel.
find out about the childhood friend she has. She has Angel. Then she has Spike. Then she has what was her
Scott.
friend's name who died? Scott. Then you
Yeah.
had Parker. Then you
Yeah.
had Riley. Then you have Giles. You have the Watchers Council. You have everybody. Her entire story is built around the men in her life and her reactions to them. Xander. So
Oh my
like,
God, Sander.
what's frustrating about this story is that yes, do I think it's a feminist
We're not
show
supposed to
to
answer.
kind of I'm not answering it. I'm actually going to answer it later on.
Hmm.
I think in season 7 we start to see her stand on
Yeah.
her own 2 feet,
Yeah.
Hmm.
but I think it takes 6 fucking seasons
Yeah.
for her to do that, and it has to have her come back from like from heaven, be dragged down by her friends, and have to live in this kind of world. But still, it's only in season 6 is she standing by herself without a man in her life. Like Riley
Seven.
comes back and kind of,
7, you
sorry,
mean? Yeah.
Seven.
Season 7 when she's standing by herself.
Yeah.
Yep.
right. I was, if you guys let me finish, I would have clarified what I was saying.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you for jumping in.
Okay. Sorry.
Season 6, when she is fully alone in her thoughts and her depression, and she reaches out to Spike, Riley does come back and he resurfaces with his hot new girlfriend and kind of like rubs his perfect life in his face, her face, and she feels bad. She already feels toxic about the relationship with Spike, and she feels that she is doing something terrible and also that she is wrong. But again, all of these stories, up until the end where she crawls back out of the hole at the end of season 6, does she finally like look around and go, maybe I don't need a man? And they still try it.
Yeah. With
With
Robin.
like with Robin, and thank God they moved that Robin to Faith. But never once in all of the 6 seasons that we see Buffy is she not attached or fighting for or explaining herself to or apologizing to a man in her life. Or you find out a man has done something to her to create the woman that she is right now. And I think that it's quite a dangerous kind of game to play with a character that is supposed to be as strong as her, because she is in effect even the Riley thing. I agree with you, Joe. I know exactly why they had her run, because it was the normal relationship she wanted. This like corn-fed Iowa boy who was perfect on paper. He was attractive, in a very
Could keep up. Wasn't
carbon
evil.
copy Ken doll sort of way. Um, he was polite. He was good to her friends and family. He was there to support her. But again, he was always feeling inferior to her, whether it was her strength, her power, her influence. Um, and you see that happen in like season 5, where he's like, I'll never be able to protect you. But it's it always feels like Buffy's storyline is her making herself smaller to fit the men in her life.
But I think that's the point. I honestly believe, and it's funny because you say I mean, I always look at it sort of in a metaphoric light, because we talk about this and you say she literally has to crawl out of the grave. Everything about this is metaphoric, and I really do believe that most women in this culture, especially the culture of that day, that is just true. As much as I don't want it to be true, it is true. It is true how you're identified. It is true how you're judged. It is true how you create some semblance of an identity. And it's also true, I think, that at least for my generation, and I'd like to say it's changed, but I don't. Sure, everything changes, but for that generation, for people that grew up in the '90s, I honestly believe it wasn't until our 30s, our 40s, where we're like, fuck. Uh, and gay or straight, I think that you have these weights of expectation that you carry subconsciously because nobody has these conversations, or I never got to see it. These are, to me, this should be a high school conversation. These should be elementary school conversations, and we're not having them then. We're not having them then for a boatload of reasons, whatever political reasons you want to talk about. We're not having them then. So when she says, and I know we're jumping ahead to the whole I'm not done baking yet, Holy crap, what a stupid line, but what a perfect line. Like, it's a
Yeah,
bad line, but it's a perfect line.
it's a terrible line.
But it's a terrible line. But it's a perfect example of this notion that we live so much and we're so freaking sure of ourselves as young women. Even like you walk around with a level of confidence, and I look back at it and go, what a crock of shit. What? I had no idea. I had no idea. Somebody could have hit me with a truck and I still wouldn't have understood the the culture in which I existed, and the ways in which I tried to live up to that consistently. And what did I have to do? Well, I had to, you have to get buried, metaphorically, let's hope. You have to get buried in order to see it for what it is. And I think kids today are talking about it more. Like, they're amazing. Like, I'm constantly amazed at teenagers, right? And they're talking about it more and they're throwing it out more, which is why the adults of today are so freaking terrified. They're terrified because 16-year-olds are talking the way we're talking right now. They didn't have to climb out of a freaking grave. They looked at the picture and went, nope, this is garbage. Nope, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to, pronouns and gender and race and everything, aesthetic, how you choose to present yourself. These are all things in which you succumb to back then and had to go through a real horrific awakening in order to understand it. And I still have friends that are like in their, well, we're all in our 40s, right? Who are just now going, oh, I I get it. And the funny part is, if you don't get buried, the delusion lasts longer.
It's true.
If
Wow.
you don't get buried, yeah, sorry, Stu.
I I wanted to clarify. I 100% agree. I think that it wasn't until the seventh season that I really could see and could actually point to incidents where I would classify Buffy as a third wave feminist
Mm,
and kind of that feminist movement,
yeah,
where I can see, like, especially the whole storyline of her training these potential slayers because one
yeah,
man or a tribe of men somewhere said
yeah,
that only
yeah, yeah,
one woman in all of the world is going to have the power to fight the vampires and the forces of darkness. I think is important because what it says is it's the simplest of terms is that I will help empower an army of people. I will empower the collective to stand up and fight
yeah.
again with their
Huge.
choice, with their
Yes.
consent.
Make your
And
choice. Yep.
it will not
Got it
be,
tattooed right here.
yeah, it will not be, but I will do that with the
Yeah,
power of the exception of the one person who has this power. I
yeah,
will
Hmm.
use my voice and my power to do this. So I agree 100% about that. I just think it took a hell of a long time to get there. And I think that she often falls into the trope of every strong female character, and you can see it in every single TV show. Meredith Grey, Olivia Benson, all of
hmm,
these like strong feminist characters that we have come to love and kind of hold on a pedestal. In the early part of their seasons, were told through the eyes of the relationships that they had. They were told their storylines were told aside of the men, and I think that in when this case kind of Buffy, it feels like they missed something in the earlier seasons because she is such a strong character until you add a man in her life,
yeah,
and then
Hmm.
she kind of goes against herself. And I understand that's really what the story they're trying to tell, and I get it. It just feels, looking back on it, quite sad and
yeah.
a kind of
Well,
a loss of
I think it's
a
supposed to
loss
be.
of good storytelling.
Well, it's like
Don't you think
how
I
the
think she still could have had those moments by herself. I think she still could have come to those conclusions and that growth if given the opportunity to experience and do things by herself.
well,
I don't
and
know.
in season 7, she essentially takes it on herself too. Like Angel shows up, and not to talk too much about it in season 7, but I love the idea of in I think it was him where Dawn is going to kill herself to prove her love for a man, and she literally says, "No man is worth your life ever."
Yeah, yeah,
Period. But then you see like Bella Swan saying, "I'm going to jump off a cliff for you to prove my love," like
yeah, yeah,
because I need to see you. We're never going to talk about Twilight, but like You know what I mean? Also, if you were going to get hit by that car or hit by that bus to understand it, you wouldn't have, because Edward would have saved you just in time, because of course a man would save you because that's what we're teaching people.
But they had to. I still say they had. But don't you think season five? So going back to season five, because I know
Yeah.
we've spent a lot of time in this episode, sort of, you know, waxing poetic here. But don't you think that the second half, once Riley goes away and she runs and he's gone, it it really is. It's the first time we do see Buffy without, because it's all about Dawn.
But that's the thing. But then it's you're just replacing one problem with another. It's like you're replacing Riley with Dawn, you know? And
But
it's
it's
just
still different. She's not identified through. I don't think it's the same way. I don't think it's the same thing. And let's be honest, those, if we didn't have those people in our worlds that matter,
mhm.
that are essential, that are our heart, our soul, if the we who are we? We're not people. I don't think you do any learning without back and forth. I'd prefer it not to be in the sort of heteronormative, like, love trauma bonding kind of way, but I don't think that we I think the way that we progress as people, and the way that we progress as, intelligent, thought provoking individuals is through those relationships. I never think it's void of that relationship. I personally don't think you find yourself walking, wild. You know that stupid movie? I don't think
Walking.
you find yourself there.
But like, oh, is that the one with Reese Witherspoon?
Yeah, well, you get my point.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
of
yeah,
this, like,
yeah, yeah.
go
But
find
like,
yourself. It's such
but
utter garbage. That's not where you find yourself.
But I mean, both your points, it makes sense that like Buffy doesn't start learning to be on her own or be herself until season 7, because in season 5 they just replace more trauma, or one trauma, with more trauma, and she always spends her time focusing externally so that she doesn't focus on herself. When Riley is gone, she focuses on Anya and Xander. When that kind of works itself out, she's only about Dawn, then her mom, then Dawn
Right.
again, and then Dawn. And then finally, in The Weight of the World, she is just so exhausted because rather than focusing on fixing and dealing with her own issues, she's constantly helping others. And she finally just drops and becomes comatose, essentially, because she's just
Guys,
so exhausted.
isn't that what we do?
Oh, I'm in it now. I'm doing it
Isn't
now.
that what people, all of us, isn't
Mhm.
that what we do? Don't
Yeah.
we externally focus in our lives, in our relationships, in our younger years? Remember how young she is in this too, right? Like,
Yeah. 20.
when this ends, she's like not even done university,
Yep.
right? So don't we do that until we break ourselves?
Yeah. Hmm.
In most
It's,
cases, don't we fixate externally? And again, this generation's a little bit different, but don't we fixate externally in my relationship with my mom, my relationship with my dad, my partner, my friends, my whatever? Don't we do that until we're comatose and another world's god is stealing our sister?
well, and it's
Metaphor.
literally, but it's to the point where like it's the weight of the world on her shoulders. But she's 20 years old. She has the weight of the world. And now she has to essentially be the mom. So now she's the
Yep.
slayer and the mother and the sister and the best friend and the chosen one. All these things together because, of course, in Joss Whedon fashion, we just have to take out someone in the worst possible way. I'll say, though, that the only two satisfying things about this entire season was the gift and slapping Dawn. Two of the most satisfying moments of this entire season. I would watch that on a loop. Like, and then immediately apologize. It's like, don't apologize to her. She's a monster. Good episode, though.
That
Good
damn
episode.
key. What are you
Uh,
thinking there, Stu?
I'm just trying to figure out her. She was 20 years old in The Gift.
yeah,
Yeah, so
She
because,
was
she's
born in 19.
22.
Yeah, she was born in
She is
1991.
well, they,
22. Like, she's 22 when she gets her shit together.
in
Heaven
Chosen.
help
Yeah.
me. I wish, I wish at
22.
22. I wish.
I wasn't
And
functioning
it's
at
so
22.
funny because I truly believe the softer life is, and I know this is so weird, and I wish it weren't true, but the softer life is, the less you're pushed into the fray,
Hmm.
either through whatever thing is pushing you out of that bubble, right? The quicker that happens, the quicker you're the quicker you're going to get to being 22 Buffy and not 47 Joe.
Well,
Right.
it's it's very
The
much
quicker,
like it's very much like something Stuart said a while ago, where it's like if you really push yourself, you drink red wine in the rain. You don't drink white. Like it's a very different experience.
you got
You
you
know better
gotta
to
give,
drink red.
you know, you have to immerse yourself. Again, it's why everybody always says, what's the one thing you would tell young people? It's a one piece of advice. And I'm like, go to therapy. And they're
Yeah,
like, what? And I'm like, not to fix yourself. Nope. We're talking about how do we get time alone that matters, not alone climbing wild without the right shoes. How do we get time alone that matters? And part of that, an example of that, is going to be diving deep into who you are and why you matter and what you need and what you don't need and what you don't want. Nobody takes time. I don't know many people who take time to do that. What do we wait for? We wait to get hit by the truck. We wait
damage.
to get buried alive, and then all of a sudden we're freaking out trying to make a psychiatrist appointment because I'm ready to collapse. Right? That's when we call the number. That's when we call the emergency hotline because we're ready to break. And it's at that breaking point, heaven help us if we make it through that breaking point, that you can come to a different perception. But I think that's what Buffy does well. It's all of these breaking points. And I think the fact that she has her mom dies, well, she takes care of her mom. So she's a mom to her mom and her sister for a while. And then when she dies, she's a mom to Dawn. Like seriously, she really takes into that. And her job is to protect. And her job, well, I see that being not necessarily the goal of feminism. I sometimes look at Buffy as the reality of a feminist struggle existing in a patriarchal world. So of course she has to take all that on
Hmm.
because that's what women do. That's
And get
that's what women do. And
and
again,
not get
I'm not
thanked.
saying this. No men. No, of course it's not a good thing.
No,
But
and
that's
not
what I'm
get
saying.
thanked because again, it's she's the secret slayer.
It's
So like no one
expected.
knows what she's doing. So she saves the world, like
I mean,
all these times, and it's thankless. It's a
a
thankless position.
secret
She goes
slayer.
well.
A secret slayer that everyone in Plainville knows about.
We just don't talk about it.
It's like Melinda Warden or Linda Gordon on Ghost Whisperer. It's supposed to be a secret gift she has, but yet the entire town of 50 people knows, and she talks to them
Well,
every single day.
it's important to spread the knowledge
Yeah.
because we
Uh,
get to the end, and what does Buffy do? We get to that very cool scene, right? We get to the gift, and it
Death is her
is
gift.
it is a very, besides how Spike gets beaten is just, I don't, horribly embarrassing. Besides that,
Literally
the
one of my favorite
moment on
episodes.
the edge, the moment on the edge where she makes that choice is pretty awesome, but also still very reflective of what women are supposed to do.
100%. But wouldn't it have been so interesting? Because she literally says, like my one of my favorite lines of that hits harder now than it did then was when she's with Giles training. She's like, "I'm ready," and she's like, "I've always beat them. I've always won. I
Mm.
killed Angel, but now I don't understand. I wish my mom was here." And when she stands up, she says, "If Dawn dies, I quit."
Yeah.
What would have been like if Dawn had died and she quit?
Yeah.
What a different season 6.
Sure.
Because I genuinely feel like the only one of the big factors of them ending this season the way they did was because they were leaving the WB. They had been canceled and they didn't know if they're coming
They
back.
didn't know. Yeah.
So what is a more interesting cliffhanger to get people to come back to if they do? A rogue slayer or a dead slayer? What would have been more interesting? How do we get her back? What do they do?
Mhm.
How do we? I really love the idea that if she got up there, and you can tell me what you would have done, but I would have just been like that scene with Dakota Fanning and the baby in Twilight, just toss into the fire because it's Dawn. I get it. I've already made my
Yeah.
choice. Like if the world's going to end and death is my gift, I guess I'm going to take her out and then just walk away. I think that would have been a
Yeah.
very, very interesting season 6
100%.
of trying to get her back into it
And
and
I
give
think
her a reason.
they could have all of the themes from season 6 of getting her back from being dead. They could have done. it could have been the
It could
same
have been the same thing.
storylines.
Yep.
You didn't need to really change that much. You know what
Going
I
to
mean?
Spike
You
for
just don't
pain
have
because she's in pain, all
sure.
these other
It all
things.
could
Like,
have happened in a similar way for a different motivation. Yeah.
exactly. I really think that would have been interesting because let's be real, after season 5, Dawn doesn't have a place. She really doesn't, you know?
No. Did
And
she ever?
no,
No.
but like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I do.
What do you
I
think?
do have a question about. See, I want to go back to season 4 for a second because I just
Okay.
thought of something.
Oh, I love
I
season 4.
love
Let's go
it how
back.
we all
Let's go
hate
right
season
back.
4, but we can't help ourselves but live in it.
No. But it's actually
Joss.
it's where the death is your gift part. What I
Yeah.
find is really interesting is the fact that in season 4, when she meets Sanaya, which is the first Slayer, and she's I hope I'm saying her name right, Sanaya, right? Sanaya. Okay.
I didn't even
I always
know that.
thought her name was the first Slayer.
I didn't know that they had a name.
Yeah.
Well, according to the comic books, they have given her a name, and her name is Sanaya. It's
Okay.
Yeah.
Sineya.
I
Sanaya.
like that name.
Sanaya. Yeah.
Sinead. I
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
it's
it.
beautiful.
I'm
Yeah.
into it.
Sanaya.
Okay.
What I like is the fact that when she first encounters Sanaya in her dreams in at the end of season 4,
Restless.
she rejects and mocks her. She mocks the insistence that she work alone. She mocks Sanaya's appearance,
Hmm.
and rejects the entire teachings that were happen. And basically, um, Sanaya kind of like lets them out of their dream. It isn't until season 5 when she really embraces like needing to know more about the Slayer lineage and her power and what she can do, does she seek the guidance from Sanaya and learns that death is her gift. Um,
Which
I
comes at the
find
worst
it
time.
interesting. Sorry?
Which comes at the worst time because she believes, because of her mother, that death is not a gift, which is
Well, she
why the
believes that
revelation
she
comes.
causes death, and like death and
Correct.
destruction is her gift to the world.
Yeah.
And like 100%, like I would also take that and be like, death is your gift, and be like, great, amazing.
I'm a
I'm
murderer. What fun.
a harbinger of death.
Yeah.
But I think that what was so interesting is the fact that death being her gift, it still could have been turned into Death of Dawn could be her
Yeah.
Yeah.
gift.
It's a
It
gift.
could have.
You're saving the
It's
world. It is a gift to the world.
and it's also a gift to Dawn. It's
Yeah.
like a
Yep.
gift you're giving
Setting
to
her
Dawn as
free.
well.
Yeah. Because Dawn
Yeah,
isn't
exactly. You're
real.
setting her free.
Because
Yeah.
Dawn's not real. Yeah.
No.
And you never like the fact that Dawn, like the key got taken out of her or whatever, like she was used and then she
Mhm.
survives was also not predetermined.
No.
Nobody had any idea that once you used her to open the whatever,
That it was
that she
over.
was going to survive after that.
Yeah.
That would have been all of her energy expunged. Like
Yeah.
there
If we
wasn't
knew.
ever any idea or proof that she was going to stick around for the next 2 seasons and annoy the hell out of everybody. Like
Well, if they knew it was
nobody
like
knew
2
that.
drops of blood, I think they would have been like, "Oh, okay. Well, sure. Like, I guess you won't die." It's just, and also we don't know, like, yeah, we know that she was energy, but we don't know, like, what about it? Like, what
Yeah.
is it? She part of a collective? Is it like a gem thing? Is it like is she a creature? Where is she from? Like, does she just not have memory? Because the whole point of Glory was that she was supposed to just be in this vessel and die with the vessel. She
But I
had.
think that. Sorry, go on.
No, it's just it's again, it's, and to bring it back to what you said, it's like in Restless, she says, "No friends, just the kill. We're alone," and then she says, "Death is your gift," and it's like, so she's essentially saying the same thing twice. But yeah, like I just interesting that she just rejects her outright the first time and then takes it to heart the second time in such a dramatic way.
I 100%. Yeah, 100%. I think the major failing of Dawn's character is the writing of Dawn's character
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%, 100%.
I think she could have been a really interesting addition to the show, and people still would have had a problem with her in the beginning. They would have been like, "Doesn't fit? Doesn't make sense?" Blah 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 blah. Great, but like into season 6, so she goes from season 5 as a whining, complaining 14-year-old girl or 15-year-old girl. 14, she's 14 in season 5.
14, I think, yeah.
14.
Yeah, 14 in season 5 to a 15-year-old in season 6 who is the still complaining, moaning,
Worst.
and it never really goes past that. It's like the writers just continue to write her like the same way in
Yeah.
season 4 into from
Yeah.
season 5 into season 6, and then in season 7 she was still the same until at least until the middle when
Yeah,
she got visited by her mother, and then she started becoming more adult. But it was one step too far when she was
yeah.
like, oh, I'm doing research now and being part of the Scooby Gang, because you had 2 seasons of her no real character development other than being left abandoned or as the damsel in distress every other episode, which is even called out in Once More with Feeling when Buffy says
Gotta go
Dawn
save
says
Dawn
that
again.
maybe
It's
they should
Must be a
Tuesday.
must
Yeah.
Tuesday,
be Tuesday
which I
exactly.
think is the day that they aired, right? So it's like, oh, typical Tuesday.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
what's
but
interesting
it
is,
becomes so much that there was never going to be a point where Dawn could come back from that. And I
yeah,
think that I would have preferred it be a 1 season role
Mm-hmm.
where, but I also think that they didn't anticipate. Um, I would have preferred they had Dawn from season 1. If it was going to be a
yeah,
character, have it for season 1 and end her in season 5, because then there would have been an emotional weight with the audience.
yes,
Instead, I think they fucked up because they thought that people would care like Buffy cared, but
Mm-hmm.
not at
Yeah.
all.
people did not care. And
No,
like Stefan said, I would be Dakota Fanning throwing the baby into the fire. Like one look at
yeah,
Dawn's face, and I would have like right into the pavement.
Mm-hmm.
Either
palmed
myself
forehead.
swan dive into the pavement, or I would have just been like goodbye.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I pushed what's his face immediately off. I could do the same thing twice. And also, again, it's
Exactly.
just Joss had a single rule, which was my main cast does not die, which is so dumb because, again, you're not building these characters. You're just adding more kindling to the fire. And then you bring a character that nobody likes and expects everyone to give a crap when she dies or if she doesn't. It just,
Mm-hmm.
which made it even worse because
I'm
then Buffy's gone. Your character is gone. The whole
Mm-hmm.
point, the reason of being here is gone because of who? That whiny little girl that no one gave a shit about.
But I
like,
think that that's the failing of Joss Whedon in this story is he created a character no one liked instead of
Mm-hmm.
working to make a character someone did like, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what he it was lazy fucking writing.
he did it
Mm-hmm.
It was
twice.
lazy
We
writing.
talked about it.
Yeah,
Michelle I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
Trachtenberg.
Uh,
Trachtenberg.
Trachtenberg. She talks about that. She infers it anyways. I mean, I don't know how many gigs she got after Buffy. I don't know how much of a working
Gossip
actress she
Girl.
was.
She went to Gossip Girl, and she
Oh.
played Catherine Mertoy. She literally played Sarah Michelle Gellar's famous role in Cruel
Cruel
I
Intentions.
Intentions.
That's funny, right? Was she
Hmm.
good? I didn't watch Gossip Girl.
She was
Not a
fine.
fan.
Okay. My
She's
point
exactly what
is
she needed to be.
she kept her mouth shut for a very long time. And she kept her mouth shut because of who Josh was, I think. I think she kept her mouth shut because you don't ever want to be the girl who complain. Look at how long it's taken for people to complain about Josh Whedon.
Oh, Charisma Carpenter was what, like a couple decade or so? Because,
It's
and
insane, right?
yeah,
And you're protecting again. It all plays into the same narrative. You're protecting your image. You're protecting your ability to get work. You're protecting what people think. We're talking about we're talking about exactly what it mimicked in the show, which is all of these young female actresses were only allowed to be who they were and achieve the success that they did as long as men in power liked them.
hmm,
And one of the active ways you get liked is you shut up.
yeah.
Whatever
Well,
goes on, you keep your mouth shut.
hmm,
I don't know what roles Charisma's had since she's been talking about it. Now I know she's older, so we do get
hmm.
ignored quite a bit. But it either has to be a floodgate scenario, like the whole Me Too movement, or by Rose McGowan, by whoever opens their mouth in that moment, even if they're telling the truth. The only thing that's going to happen is bad producers and directors and guys with money don't want you because it's obvious. But the
Hmm.
good ones, they still don't want you because in the back of their head, they still think maybe, possibly she was lying
Hmm.
and that she could bring that energy to my set. And if I touch her back the wrong way, or if I shake her hand the wrong way, or if I give her that was still, and to me, it still is. The Me Too movement didn't eradicate that.
Or Time's Up.
I also think that like it was sad because Michelle Trachtenberg isn't a bad actress. She's
No.
certainly she's had quite a bit of success in movies. She had Euro Trip. She had Harriet the Spy. She was
Oh,
in
right,
Gossip
right, right.
Girl.
That's
She was
where,
in
yeah.
Mercy. And like she's also did a handful of episodes across like major television shows like House, Law and Order SVU, Law and Order.
I
So
just
she's
watched
not a
that
bad
episode. Yeah.
actress. She's a very like I wouldn't say she's an amazing actress, but she's good. She's very
Mhm.
good. I enjoy her, and she certainly embodies the characters that she is acting in. I think the failing of this character is the fact that she just didn't have any direction in writing. And also,
Mhm.
you're right, she was young. She was, I think, what, 17, 18 when she got the role. And it was because of Sarah Michelle Gellar was like, I think you should hire this one, this actress. She's great. I've worked with her before, or she was on my,
Oh, is that how that happened?
yeah.
Interesting.
Um, but I don't think they did enough to protect her reputation, because what I think people looked at was they watched Dawn and were like, "Oh, that's just bad acting." No,
Hmm.
it's also poor writing.
Yep,
And I
100%.
think that that's the failing. I think that's the saddest part about actors and actresses in Hollywood is that oftentimes when you have like shows of this caliber and you're given a character, people associate that character with you and are like automatically turned
Yep.
off. But unfortunately, all of actors get to hold the brunt of bad directing and bad
Hmm.
writing, and they're the face of it, and they will take on that burden, um, for the rest of their careers.
Listen,
Like
I
we
am
can still talk about
astounded.
things with like Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep, she did She Devil. I love She Devil. I think it's a campy, fun movie. But people like point to that sometimes and go, "Oh, Meryl Streep, she had her terrible time in the like early '90s."
Oh
But it
my
really
God.
is just that she couldn't get any work, and the
Yeah.
work that she did do wasn't great, and she
Yeah.
did everything she could with the material that she had.
I often am astounded that anybody makes it out of George Lucas's Star Wars and never works again.
There is a really there's a really
It's
interesting
like if you can survive being that guy and being directed and told how to deliver your lines, like Liam Neeson looks awful in the horrible. The dude's Liam Neeson, but yet put him under George Lucas's tutelage, and all of a sudden you're like, "Ooh, what? Why is he talking like that? He's awful."
Well, I think we should all. There's the article, "The Undoing of Joss Whedon" on Vulture that I think we should all take a look
Oh
at
yeah, I
because
read that.
it's. I'm fascinated to read more about it because there's more allegations on his misogynistic conduct
Oh
on
God,
the set. But I think it's because of it was Ray Fisher and Gal Gadot that sort
who
of
started it? Yep.
restarted it. And then with that sort of momentum, that's when Chris McCarpenter said, "Here's all the things that happened to me." And then people from the set and series started standing up with her from both shows. And I found it very interesting that of the individuals that didn't. I don't think David Boreanaz or Xander,
No,
whatever
no,
his name
they
is,
didn't.
they did not. And then you
No.
have like Amber Benson, Michelle Trachtenberg, Sarah Michelle Gellar. It's really interesting. But we've talked about this before. James Marsden has been talking about this for a while. Like the very first thing of him, like confronting him in the hallway, saying, "You're not going to ruin my show," and this and that. There
Mhm.
was already a long history of Joss Whedon being a bully and
Mhm.
then misogynistic and a creep, but we just sort of went like, "Oh, that's Joss." I can't wait to read that article. I'm very interested.
And um, Spike is always very careful when he talks about that.
Yeah.
I've heard him talk about it in person quite a few times because
Hmm.
people, at Comic Con, especially when it was at the height, that's all the questions. And
Hmm.
his consistent line, which again I find frustrating, it was a lot of the times I was on set and I did what I did. Josh was nowhere to be found.
Hmm.
So I never had any firsthand experience. That's what he kept saying. I never saw it. I never had any firsthand experience. But Anthony Head said the same thing. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Like in a roundabout way. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Meanwhile, you have all these women lining up and saying, like Amber, listen to Amber Benson. You want to hear somebody go off? And she will do it and school you in the most articulate vernacular you can possibly think of, and it'll just put your head down and walk away.
Hmm.
But it's still like these men. I haven't heard any of the men on from Buffy
Not really.
make a stand. You know,
Hmm.
I, not one. I haven't heard one. And I think sometimes it's all about what work are we going to get. And
Yeah.
it's all about who are you going to protect? And here's probably the catcher. I think looking back on it and knowing bad things happened or knowing that it wasn't okay and not doing anything,
Mhm.
I think as a person, you want to pretend that I didn't see that. I didn't know that was happening. I'm going to pretend as though I wasn't aware or I wasn't there or I didn't hear it right or
Come on.
whatever. Because if I truly say, no shit, I saw the way he was with charisma. I saw that. Like, think about what is Henry Cavill, whatever his name is?
Yep.
What does he say? Have you heard no?
No, or Ben Affleck,
I haven't heard
or
word one out of him. What has
no.
Ben Affleck said? Nothing.
Hmm.
Nothing. Are you telling me? Did he say anything?
I think Ben Affleck has to really be careful what he gets involved in right now,
Who?
considering Ben Affleck. I think he has to
Oh,
worry about his own press issues
Yeah.
listen.
right now.
But this
I
was a
don't
long
think that.
time ago.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but I also think too, like, he has his own issues right now that I think a problematic man talking about another problematic man would just cause another firestorm.
yeah.
I do want to clarify. Anthony Stewart had did say that I agree. He did say similar to what you said. He said I have been scanning my memories and I can't. He's like I don't know how I could have missed it. I
Yeah,
wish
yeah.
Yeah.
someone had come to me.
He gave
Uh,
validity to it, but still
yeah,
said he didn't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that is. I would say like did James Marster say anything about it?
He
Because
says
he
it just
said
like
on
I
the press
described
show,
it.
he says Joss is a legend.
He said it just as I described it, really. And I've heard him say it like in a Comic-Con room full of fans, and I've heard him
Hmm.
say it like in interviews and stuff like that. Um, but it's interesting. You're saying it's a great point, Stu. And again, we go right back to why I still say Buffy being defined by men is still the feminist struggle that we needed to see because you're saying problematic men, talking about problematic men. My problem is in the 90s, were there others men?
Wow, Spike's 58. Well, so what actually,
Where were the I want to know in the 90s, where were the unproblematic men? Because
that's
we had a
true.
culture that said it was okay.
Yep.
We
Paul
had a
Yep.
Rudd.
culture.
Paul Rudd was unproblematic.
Okay. Well, Marsters did say something. So the tweet he put out was, "While I will always be honored to have played the character of Spike, the Buffy set was not without challenges. I do not support abuse of any kind, and I'm heartbroken to learn of the experience of some of the cast I send my love
Learn.
and support."
That
He
learn.
also
Yeah.
he
See?
also did Michael Rosenbaum's um,
Yep.
podcast
Podcast.
and said quite a bit about his own experiences with Joss Whedon. I
Yes.
listened to that a couple of months ago, and it
Uh-huh.
was interesting. But again, there is what I will say, and this is something that I don't see from the women speaking out. When it comes to the men, um, there seems to be a little bit of a reverence for Joss Whedon still
Sure.
that's paired alongside their
Hmm.
either um, lending their voices to the women who spoke out or giving their own feedback of what they
Yep.
saw, but it's always with the utmost respect for the creator or the person they're speaking about. And even
There it
though I
is.
don't think they mean to have it, or at least I hope they don't, there always comes across like, yeah, but like it still was an amazing show.
Yeah,
So
but
it sort
yeah,
of feels like they're saying like, yes, it's overtly terrible what happened, and I feel really bad, but look what this great thing we still created together.
right.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, James Marsden says that. Like, that's probably a quote. That could be a quote directly from his mouth, the way he speaks about it sometimes.
Hmm.
All
Which I
right.
think
Well,
is like, I think that's the major issue that most of society has is that we can't separate the ends, like the end project, to justify the means. Like the amazingness of
mhm,
the issue, the thing that you have, does not justify how someone got there or what people had to endure to produce that thing. And I think that's when you have to really, really work to separate the thing, like Stefan said at the beginning of this whole podcast, separate the thing that you love versus
Hmm.
what you
The creators of it.
the
The
creators of
creators
it.
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Because
we don't talk
honestly,
about.
I
Oh,
think
sorry.
that's a great way for us to sort of to encapsulate season 5 is this
Yeah.
idea that while we're going through this, if we don't figure out, well, this is true of all art. It's not just, television. It's not just true of anything else.
Hmm.
All art has meaning because it means something to that person and it means different things to that person. That doesn't erratic, that doesn't go away because of the injustices and the horrific conditions under which these characters did this incredible art that means so much to you. Those
Hmm.
two are two very separate things. But the key is, I think we should be able to talk about them in like at the same time and still have those. One doesn't necessarily have to negate the other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't negate the impact of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I'm sure as hell not giving Josh Wheaton any, free passes because I really liked his freaking show. No, that's not how it works. In fact, I would use it if I was writing this course in university, and I often want to go to U of T just so I could take it. But if I was writing this course, I would talk about the art imitating life, imitating art.
Hmm.
The idea that this heroine is created in the image of men and is constantly battling being defined by the image of men, all the while existing in real life on that very patriarchal kind of controlling abusive set, I think is magic. I'm
Hmm.
like, talk about that. That is interesting, and that adds another layer to the analysis of the characters and the writing and all of that. But to take it away is just negating how much real life impacts the art we see, right?
Also, watch Soap Dish because I love that movie. Just about the behind the scenes of a soap opera.
I like it. I like it. All right, guys, can you give me your favorite quote from season 5 and then we'll wrap up?
Oh.
You have one off the
Um.
top of your head?
Uh.
The hardest thing to do in this world is live in it.
So depressing.
Glory, you're really not the brightest god in the heavens, are you?
Or I even like when Willow says, "I
I
will
found.
always find you."
Oh, because she uses that in Once Upon a Time.
Your love for Once Upon a Time runs deep. Mine's real, real simple, and I've often wanted it on a shirt, and I think I will do a black on black truck. It's my favorite.
I love that.
It's my
I also
favorite.
I love the shirt I got from you. I wear it around the house all the time.
Oh,
It's my favorite.
fantastic. Guys, can you tell everybody where to find you before we come back next week and do season 6? And let's be
Which is
honest,
my
season
favorite
6 is a lot of
season.
fun. Season 6,
Oh,
of
I'm
course
not a
it is.
fan.
You dark, depressed.
It's my favorite season.
It's
I
my
can't.
favorite
It's a
villain.
good one,
Mm.
though. Where can we find you, Steph?
You could find me at Rebel Without a Closet, RWACPOD, on Instagram. You can also find us on Facebook. Our Patreon is also WACPOD. And you can find me, SJ Maroney, on Instagram.
Stuart?
And you can find me on TikTok at Jenikin, JNIKON_, where you can laugh with me every single day. And you can find me on Instagram at the same handle, where you can follow my life and stories and all of my very strong political opinions in my stories.
Very
Please,
strong. That somehow
please
sometimes need to be
listen.
carefully worded.
Carefully worded, because one time I said "f you" and TikTok and Instagram took me down. Well, there are now that app with their full junk out,
And
and they
listen,
can't
I
find me.
called somebody. I called somebody a potato. That's what I did.
Yeah.
That was the line I crossed. The end said "you potato," and they said this is not acceptable.
Meanwhile,
Get
I've
out.
just been naked on my lives for the past 3 weeks, and no one said a word. Wearing nothing but a
Amazing,
MAGA hat.
guys. Hey,
Oh
yeah,
wow.
exactly. Thank you so much for hanging out, and for everybody who's listening, watching. Thank you for hanging out with us. We will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat station. Dismissed.